There is no doubt that the world's greatest hacker had great computer skills, but what you might not know is that the world's most infamous computer sleuth was also a master manipulator, able to convince people to share highly valuable information, to give him access to a company's secrets, basically to give him anything he wanted. How? He understood one thing more than anyone else: human behaviour. Clever, shy, mischievous, with a tinge of menace to him, the world's most wanted computer outlaw was able to walk into a company building, charm his way past security, and gain access to their network. He knew a thing or two about what made people tick. The thing was, he did it all for fun, the thrill laying knowing that he had gained that power. And his name? Kevin Mitnick. Kevin Mitnick was born on the 6th of August 1993 in California. Unfortunately, his childhood was one of neglect. His dad left when he was 3 and his mum worked multiple jobs to support him, so naturally Kevin spent a lot of time alone. To pass the lonely long hours, Kevin got up to a lot of trouble, using a ticket puncher to get free bus rides around his town and using technology to play pranks on other people. He had an addiction for poking at cracks within the system. But his tricks weren't always so innocent. When he was 17, Kevin targeted the operating system of Pacific Bell, otherwise known as AT&T. Pretending to be an employee who wanted to show his friends around one night, Kevin convinced a security guard to let him into the AT&T facility. He then walked out with stacks of manuals on how their computer system worked, which landed Kevin in juvenile detention for 3 months. Enter the late 1980s.
Imagine, if you will, sitting down to your morning coffee, turning on your home computer to read the day's newspaper. Well, it's not as far-fetched as it may seem.
Computers are just beginning to become mainstream. Technology is rapidly rising from Super Mario Bros. To handheld cell phones, and Kevin Mitnick spends every waking hour on his computer, hacking into companies just for the fun of it. One incident even lands Kevin in solitary confinement for 8 months after he pretended to be an IRS agent and copied a company's entire computer software. The FBI now kept a close watch on this masterful manipulator by any means necessary. One of Kevin's schemes included changing the electronic serial number of his Novotel PTR 825. This way his cell phone couldn't be tracked, and he did this by impersonating employees at Novotel. But his goal of becoming untraceable wouldn't work out of the way he wanted it to. One day Kevin was introduced to a supposed star hacker from his brother's ex-girlfriend named Eric Hines, but Eric proved to be a little bit strange. He was super secretive towards Kevin and wouldn't give him his phone or page number. Kevin immediately thought this was suspicious and decided to dig a little deeper. Through a third party, Kevin managed to gain access to Eric's phone and noticed that some of Eric's phone calls were made to the Los Angeles FBI. Kevin's suspicions were starting to become unearthed, so he devised a scheme. He would pretend to work for the Inspector General's office and call to find a little more information on this supposed Eric. And it turns out the real Eric Hines was actually a baby who died as an infant. The Eric that Kevin was talking to was a man named Justin Tanner Peterson, a former hacker picked up by the FBI to track down other computer sleuths. Kevin now knew he was being pursued by the FBI, so he decided to play them at their own game. Kevin figured out all the names and numbers of the FBI agents that he was talking to. He would hack into their systems and track their phone call records to determine their locations. He even scammed FBI phone calls, carefully listening in to their conversations. In September 1992, Kevin picked up a phone call of an agent named Glenn McGuire and realised that they had found out where Kevin lived and were coming to arrest him. In a hurry, Kevin quickly cleaned up his apartment, making sure no evidence was left behind, and he also left the police with a little gift too. Upon arrival, the police were treated with a surprise, an empty apartment and a box of donuts waiting for them. Not even Police Chief Wiggum could refuse that offer. Investigators then tracked down Kevin to a local print shop, which he was visiting with his grandmother. After a somewhat comedic chase throughout the store, Kevin narrowly made it out and escaped. He was now on the run. After all these years, Kevin says that his biggest regret wasn't his hacking or any of his criminal activity, but the fact that his poor grandmother has spent 3 hours in a car outside the print shop wondering what happened to her grandson. To evade capture, Kevin changed his identity and moved around the country, working jobs in different tech positions and hacking by night. The fun for Kevin wasn't in his criminal activities. He actually never used his skills to steal any money. He treated his FBI chase like a big video game. He thought of himself as a fugitive. He loved the idea of putting himself in dangerous situations simply for the thrill of it, hacking the world's biggest tech companies while he also trolled the FBI. One of these companies was Motorola, where Kevin wanted to get his hands on the source code behind one of their latest phones. Posing as a man named Rick from Motorola's research teams, Kevin called head office and got on the phone with a lady named Alyssa, who was a stand-in for Pam who'd gone off on holiday. He told Alyssa he wanted the source code for their new phone and that Pam had already arranged to give it to him. And just like that, Alyssa handed Kevin one of Motorola's most protected trade secrets. The master of human behaviour had struck again. His next target was Nokia, where he persuaded the lead developer to share the source code of one of their latest phones. The only problem was Nokia blocked outbound file transfers for security reasons, so he convinced the developer to ship him the code via a tape drive to a Nokia office in Florida. Kevin's friend Lewis would then impersonate a senior vice president of Nokia to retrieve the tape, and the package was arranged to be picked up at a hotel near the head office of Nokia. Upon the day of pickup, Kevin called the hotel just to double check everything. He became suspicious when the receptionist appeared unusually nervous on the phone, so Kevin decided to call back, but this time as an FBI agent. He asked the hotel if they were familiar with the situation on their premises, to which they replied, "Of course, the police have the whole place locked down." It was a very close call for Kevin. By this time, the New York Times labelled Kevin as cyberspace's most wanted man, and an increasingly frustrated FBI got in contact with a well-known computer expert named Tsutomu Shimomura, otherwise known as Shimmy, who was a freelance gunslinger with a moral conscience. He joined forces with the FBI to help track down Kevin. Shimmy had a personal grudge against Kevin. On Christmas Day 1994, Kevin hacked into Shimmy's home computer while he was out of the house, downloading all of his software and hacking into his special server. He even allegedly made a series of creepy phone calls to Shimmy, claiming that "my kung fu is superior," which obviously didn't charm him. Shimmy was determined to bring down Kevin once and for all. Kevin stored the files he had stolen from Shimmy on a forum called The Well. Cross-referencing instances of unauthorized access to the well, Shimmy noticed a pattern and was able to determine Kevin's point of access. They came from a tower in a town called Raleigh in North Carolina. Shimmy had determined Kevin's location and hopped on the next plane over. When Kevin tried to use a different cell phone provider as an extra layer of security, it was in vain. All the major cell phone companies were on alert for any suspicious behaviour, immediately relaying that to Shimmy. Shimmy tracked any and every suspicious call that was made, carefully trying to pinpoint the source of the cellular radio signal made to a precise location. When he found a phone call between Kevin and another hacker, Shimmy and the FBI rejoiced they had finally found him. On February the 15th, 1995, Kevin went home from the gym and logged onto his computer. He noticed various backdoors that he had been using to access systems had vanished. A sinking feeling hit his stomach like an anchor dropping to the deep sea. He knew something bad was about to happen. At 1:30 in the morning, Kevin got a knock on the door. It was the FBI. He was done. Kevin was tried and sentenced to 5 years in prison. The prosecution alleged that he had caused $300 million in damages because of the value of the source code. But Kevin actually never did anything with this information. He likened it to stealing a Coke and demanding he repay the cost of developing Coca-Cola's secret formula. Due to his predicament, Kevin actually garnered an array of supporters and the Free Kevin movement was born. Kevin would later say that this meant the world to him. Eventually, Kevin was released from prison, and just like Jordan Belfort and Frank Abagnale before him, the US government invited Kevin to share his insights. Kevin would claim that his crimes were simply that of trespass and he was fueled simply by curiosity. From then on, Kevin would use his hacking skills ethically by advising companies on their security. Finally, on July the 16th, 2023, Kevin Mitnick died peacefully. He was 59 years old. Kevin's time on the run, His fascination with social engineering and flair for power has changed how most companies share and use their most sensitive data. In his 2011 memoir, Kevin would write, "Anyone who loves to play chess knows that it's enough to defeat your opponent. You don't have to loot his kingdom or seize his assets to make it worthwhile."